The Senate will now have before it for final consideration Senate Bill 1331. The Secretary will read the bill.
In the Senate, Senate Bill 1331 by Finance Committee, an act relating to appropriations, reducing the appropriation for fiscal year 2026, reducing the number of authorized full-time equivalent positions for fiscal year 2026.
Mr. President.
Senator Grow.
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that further reading of Senate Bill 1331 be dispensed with, and the journal show it's been read the third time at length, section by section, and placed before the Senate for final consideration.
No objection. Senator Grow, you're recognized to begin the debate.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 1331, otherwise known as the 2026 Idaho Rescissions Act, reduces the current budget, fiscal year 2026, the one we're in, by a total of $192,656,600, of which $131,321,800 is from the general fund, $52,236,600 is from federal funds, and $9,097,700 is from dedicated funds. This bill is a necessary step to balance the budget, balancing the budget and our constitutional plenary power. With action in this bill, we are projecting an ending balance for fiscal 2026 of just over $45 million, which is down by merely $400 million from our projected ending balance last session. This bill has several components, but the most notable is it reduces the current year general fund appropriation to most of state government by 4%. Additionally, this bill removes the budget for the Empowering Parents program, and it reduces the public school support by $22.3 million to account for the current projected student enrollment decrease, and that projection is from the State Department of Education, for the 2025-26 school year. While this rescission act reduces most budgets more than 3% from the holdback implemented by Executive Order 2025-05, notably it does not further decrease budgets for Medicaid, public schools, Idaho Department of Correction, nor for the Idaho State Police. Additionally, this bill reduces 110.05 FTP and removes funding for unallocated change in employee compensation, following legislative instruction found in Senate Bill 1110 from last session. In summary, this bill takes difficult but necessary steps to balance this budget for this fiscal year. Other comments, dedicated funds, these are not being swept back into the general fund. The cash stays with the fund. This bill only reduces the appropriation for long-term vacant positions and unallocated CEC, subject to the Senate 1110 requirements from last session. Federal funds, these reductions are related to the general fund reductions. In these cases, the general fund is used as state matching funds for federal funds. Regarding the process, why are these reductions in one bill? Some may think this has never been done before. That is not the case. It has. In 2010, there was House Bill 250 and Senate Bill 1227, which followed the same format. In 2021, there was House Bill 207, which reduced appropriations by 5%. So it's not anything unheard of or new. It's similar to what has been done in the past when things were tight. I'm looking at the budget sheet provided to me by the gentleman on the second floor, his representatives, shows the $45 million ending balance for fiscal 26. In order to achieve that balance, that's the $131,321,800 that we're pulling out of general funds. If we don't pull that out of general funds, then obviously the budget goes upside down and we'd be in the hole over $125 million based on the budget that the gentleman from the second floor has provided for us. There are some uncertainties even in that budget. You remember that we have increased the revenue projection for fiscal 26 by 153 million over what the gentleman on the second floor originally estimated. But then we had the tax conformity bill that came through, which basically wiped out that increase and put us back near the 45 million balance. Now, that presumes that the 155 million conformity bill is an accurate estimate. You may or may not recall that the gentleman on the second floor, took an average between what the State Tax Commission provided as what it would cost, and this is the average, but it's still a guess. The revenue number that we increased by 153 million is still nearly 40 million behind as of right now. It's 10 million behind last year's regular revenue, and it's 40 million behind what we have projected and is projected into this budget that we're dealing with here today. So if you consider the revenue that's still uncertain, behind by 40 million currently, if you look at the 116 million that was decided by the gentleman on the second floor, and the 15 million that is additional, 1%, which excludes Medicaid, K-12, Idaho, and State Police, if you look at all those, and if they happen, then we're going to be at that 45 million ending balance. If that 40 million behind the current revenue estimate holds, then we'll have 5 million on the bottom line. If we don't do the 116 million proposed by the gentleman on the second floor, then we're down to basically 110 million. If we don't do the additional 1% that JFAC has added, then we're down to 125 million to balance what the gentleman on the second floor has put together on his budget. So with that, I'd encourage your support so we can help the gentleman on the second floor succeed in doing what he has proposed and have a balanced budget. With that, debate is open, Mr. President.
Is there further debate?
Mr. President,
Senator Burnt,
debate against the bill.
you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Before I talk about why I don't support this bill, I think it's important to note that our JFAC and Appropriation Committee do a marvelous job and work really, really hard. I can honestly say there's not a single, I can honestly say that the members of JFAC put in the most work. It's a grueling job. I have dear friends who are on that committee, and when they're here at the Capitol, I never see them very often. And I also believe that it's important as a conservative that it's okay to cut. I don't want it to seem like I'm against cutting when we need to cut. However, what I'm against is when we do cut, I believe that we need to do it in a responsible manner. I believe that we need to take a scalpel to these budgets, not necessarily a certain number across the board. In this particular bill, the JFAC added a 1% addition to the cuts that were recommended by the governor. I support the cuts that were recommended by the governor. I do not support the 1% that was added on after the fact because it's arbitrary. It's easy to just add 1% onto the top and call it good. However, it's tough to take a scalpel and dig deep and figure out which budgets really need to be cut, because I do believe that there are divisions, departments, offices in this building and in the state that are ran fairly well, that are pretty lean. And I do not think it's fair at all to cut their budgets when other budgets could be cut more. So because I believe that these budgets, this particular budget, rescission budget, wasn't done in the responsible way that I would have liked to have saw it done, I will be a respectful no. Thank you.
Thank you. Further debate? Senator Galloway.
I'd like to respond to the comments made by the senator from 21. I serve on the committee, and first of all, I agree with him. If I'm looking at my business, I'm certainly not going to make a broad-based cut or rescission to any budget that I see in front of me. I'm going to do it carefully, and I'm going to look at the sales team, and I'm going to make sure that I don't touch there, because if I'm trying to grow a business, I'm certainly not going to cut my sales team, but I may be a little bit more careful about where I do make different reductions. The challenge is we are in a body where we do not have a business owner or a board of directors. There are over 100 budgets, and there are over 100 people, and there is no way that you can take a scalpel effectively to 100 budgets with 100 people that have to agree on that. So I would love to say that we have all the time in the world and we can dig into each of these budgets, but having just served on the committee and looking at the information that we're provided, I recognize, and I didn't agree with this at the beginning, that there is no other way to make these kind of decisions except for by taking a very dramatic approach and looking, and first cutting all of the fat, and then going back second and restoring things that are important. And that is what we're doing in JFAC right now. So yes, there was a reduction that was made, and it was significant, and it was across the board. And that is the only way it would happen with 100 people and over 100 budgets. But now what we're doing is we are carefully going back into those budgets. And I'm going to give you 3 quick examples of how we're restoring the money to the places that need it so that we can leave this building with a balanced budget and with a sane and reasonable approach to money. So as we go back and look at the, actually, I think that there are several budgets that we've already voted on that we're restoring money back, and I'm going to let other people to speak to those, and so I don't take too much time, but that is something that's happening, and I want everyone to know that it would be lovely if we had the time and we were a full-time legislature and we had full-time staff and we could sit and talk about budgets for months on end, but that's not the situation that we're in. And the situation that we're in is going to force us to take a dramatic cut first and then to go back and look at reasonable restorations. And I promise you that we're doing that every day in JFAC. I'm working hard to make sure that important services are restored and that the fat and the waste is left aside. And with that, I'll sit down.
Is there further debate?
Mr. President,
Sarah Carlson,
to debate in favor of the bill.
you have the floor, Senator.
So, fellow senators, we have been working really hard on this budget, on the entire budget. It is our job as we leave, it is our job to balance the budget, appropriate the money that the state needs to operate. And when we came into session, it was apparent that the bottom line was going to be negative based on several factors. And so JFAC has been working very hard to balance that. We had to set a cap so we would know where we fit. And based on that cap, we are now adding some enhancements and deducting in some areas based on what we feel is need. You are trusting the 20 members there to do the work, and we are working hard on every single budget as they come in front of us, enhancements and maintenance. This bill is a good bill. Thank you.
Is there further debate?
Mr. President?
Senator Zeiderfeld.
Thank you, Mr. President. To vote in favor of this bill. Being on the JFAC team, this is a new process for me. I've learned a lot being on JFAC, and I actually suggest everybody have their turn on this committee. With that being said, we are very careful about what we're doing, and when we actually appropriate bills, we actually allow them to make the decisions on how they want to spend that. And so in making these cuts and rescissions, I should say, we're also allowing them to make those decisions on where they see fit to make those rescissions. Going forward, I think there's a lot that we can learn from the situation that we're in. A lot of our consequences that we find ourselves in is, we do have the conformity that is going to be a blessing to people because they'll be giving revenue back to their own pockets. But at the same time, the government loses their revenue. We do know that the individual revenue that's estimated to go back to the people and the loss to the government is about $155 million, but we're not incorporating what maybe the corporation part of that loss is. So there is still some uncertainty as we go forward. And as individuals out there, everybody is dealing with inflation issues. They're dealing with having to make decisions in their business on how they're going to keep their household going. I think that's only important that the government lead by example, saying that we're willing to do that as well. And we need to have this because next year we don't know where we're going to be at. You know, our revenue, we forecast that revenue. We, like I always share in committee, we're not fortune tellers and we're not prophets. We can't tell what the future is going to hold. And so we're always predicting a number going forward, what we think we're going to make. But here we're dealing with some consequences and we have to make some difficult decisions. And we are working through those in the work groups to try to make sure that those are being responsible decisions. But I really do think that going forward, if we do not take this step now for these rescissions now, we will be coming back next year with even more difficult decisions next year. And so this is very important. And it isn't to say that we are, the agencies and all of they're making the wise decisions, I hope, as well. And when we give them that freedom to make that 1% cut. We're going to trust that they're going to do it wisely. And if they don't do it wisely, I guess we'll deal with that next year. But I think that at this time we need to go forward with this rescission so that we can continue with our work. And then also send a message to our constituents that we're willing to make that holdback right now because we realize we're in difficult times. And that next year, hopefully, after maybe we're done eating beans and rice for a session, we can maybe start to bring some of that back as we see that. And so I just really think that this is important, and it will send a strong message to our constituents that we are looking out for them as well as for running the government as well. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Is there further debate?
Mr. President.
Senator Blaylock.
Thank you, Mr. President. I get the sense that, in Congress when they say we'll read the bill after we pass it, that's kind of how I feel with this one and some of the comments of we just need to pass this. I appreciate the senator talking about House Bill 250 that passed in 2010. Those were the governor's holdbacks during the recession, but those were just the governor's holdbacks. Where I have a hard time with this bill is this is not just the governor's holdbacks, which those have already been in place since the interim.
I'm going to stop
Sure.
and remind the body of Section 111 in Masons. Now, I didn't stop Senator Groh, nor did I stop Senator Burnt, but anyway, we don't refer to the executive. Anyway, read that section. It's the gentleman on the second floor, and it explains why. And then we're also, while we're stopped here, it's also a Senate rule, and you pay me to enforce the rules, right? So to talk about what happened in committee. Now, you're not in JFAC, and so you didn't bump up against that line, but others did. So with that caveat, we'll go forward and have robust debate.
Thank you, Mr.
Excuse me
President.
for interrupting.
No, thank you. I appreciate the reminder. I got to think about where I was.
Yeah.
House Bill 250 from 2010. So where that bill and this bill differ are that was just the gentleman on the second floor, the cuts during the interim. We added on the random 1% for 2026, which that's fine. I think where I am having a hard time is when the gentleman on the second floor took those cuts during the interim. across the board, I wasn't super happy with that. Obviously, we all voted for a tax cut here last session. I thought it was lazy, quite frankly, and not how I would do it in my business. When you have agencies that have grown at the rate that we've seen in this state, I don't know why we would do across the board cuts. And so I'm disappointed to see that we're adding to that, not in the terms of cuts, but I just think it makes it complicated. And one example, I think, is, I've asked a few different JFAC members about what happened with our Attorney General's budget, and I can't quite get a straight answer. Some people say that they knew that it was being cut additionally, but most didn't. And from the AG doesn't work for the governor, the gentleman on the second floor, so when those cuts came through, his budget wasn't cut. The AG's budget wasn't cut. When I talked to the AG's office after this bill came out, they explained to me that they received a letter from JFAC about a 1% cut and a 2% cut, and they were ready to take those on. Okay, $300,000 this year, and an additional, next year. But they were surprised to see when the JFAC passed a $1.2 million cut for this year. And I understand there's some, we're trying to rectify that or pass some additional bills to make up for the issues that we caused in this bill. But it seems to me that it would cause, there's some clarity needed here. And even, as I talk with some of the members on that committee, it seems that clarity is is hard to come by, even across the members that do sit in that committee. And so I understand that it's difficult to dig into the budgets, but I worry these across the board cuts. I'm fine if we say, 2%, 3% for 2026, whatever it is, and that is the number that we're shooting for. But to go and cut across all of the agencies as if they are the same is not responsible. We will get what we incentivize here. And when you do that, you incentivize agencies not to be efficient, but to carry extra weight, carry extra fat, right? So just waiting for the legislature to come in and just hack another 2% away. If we want our agencies to be efficient like we say we do, then we have to look at them independently. Because quite frankly, when I look at the last 10 years of growth, the AG's office has grown just under 60%, which that sounds like a lot, but when you think about a 35% inflation in that same time and 500,000 people moving to the state, that's not too bad. But when you look at the gentleman on the second floor who's at 140% increase over that same period of time, or no offense, Mr. President, but your budget at 90% increase over that same amount of time, I don't think it is wise for us to just do these across the board cuts. It is causing us to have errors in our bill here, like we did with the AG's office, cutting him the additional 3% that he never was expecting. And I just worry we are incentivizing the wrong things here. So with that, I'm going to be voting no on this.
Is there further debate?
Mr. President,
Mayor Cook,
to debate against the bill, if I may, please.
you have the floor.
Senators, I have had the opportunity to look at these budgets for 6 years now, and they are fun, they're exciting. I really, really enjoy doing it. In fact, I enjoy doing it so much that I usually start looking at them months before we ever come into the session. That is how much fun, and I'm telling you, you're missing out. You should join us. The comment was made that there is no way we have time to look into these budgets. And I want to make sure the citizens of Idaho that you rest assured that we are looking at every line of these budgets, that we know what's going into it, and we pay the price to be able to figure that out. Now, with that being said, I am not the only one that have spent months on these budgets, though. I know many, many that have done that as well, and that they're asking hard questions of the agencies, the directors, and they're meeting with them. I know that we have to cut budgets, and I hope everybody in this room realizes that, because if you don't, then we need to start there. We have a revenue shortfall. We need to cut some budgets, and we need our budget to balance. But this rescission bill isn't the answer. And I want to be very, very clear that this rescission bill, this 50-page bill that you have before you, is not the recommendation of the man on the second floor. That is not his recommendation. Make sure you understand that. Senate Bill 1331 looks more like a Christmas tree. And we all know what Christmas trees look like here in this body. And we've all swore that we will never, ever pass another Christmas tree here again. So, with one vote, we're being asked to make a blanket cut of approximately 4% to most of the state agencies for fiscal year 2026. The comment was made that this bill does not cut the public school support, the Division of Medicaid, the Department of Corrections, and the Idaho State Police. Again, I want to say that's not quite true. Those four departments are getting cut. They're getting cut with the 3% holdback that the governor did. But we as a organization, or in Senate Bill 1331, we did not do the additional 1%, okay? They didn't get the additional 1%, but they did get the governor's holdback. If you agree with only one of these cuts, okay, back to the Christmas tree idea. If you agree that, oh, I like that cut, first of all, I'd like you to be able to find that in this 50-page bill, where you're looking at. Okay, but if you can say, yeah, I like that cut, that's the one I want, but you're being forced to vote on the 100+ other budgets that are in this bill just to get your one. I believe that's where you start saying, okay, a Christmas tree, I'm starting to see what you're talking about. Every state agency has a specific purpose, what they do. They have a mission statement of what they're doing. This bill treats all agencies exactly the same. Second, in a tight budget year, it's fair to say that everyone should share in the pain, or as I like to say, get the same haircut. But this bill isn't a true single subject like our Constitution requires. Senate Bill 1331 pulls back money from every agency, but the source and purpose of those funds vary across all agencies. For some, it's general funds. For others, it's dedicated funds. And for some, it's matching federal funds. Again, let me be very clear. I know we need to cut. We need to balance our budget. But showing these cuts into a single 50-page bill isn't smart, and it's not transparent. I want you to look at that bill and say, if you took that bill home and somebody at your town hall said, why did you cut that? And you opened that bill and tried to find it, you're not going to find it. You're going to be clueless. Bills should be transparent. You should be able to look at them and read them and say, oh, this is where it was. Yep, right there. That's the cut. That's how much it was cut. And that's the fund that it came out of, whether it came out of general or federal or dedicated. Finally, Idahoans deserve the truth about these cuts. This bill hides some serious situations that we face. Last year, we made a choice to adopt tax cuts, which we all like tax cuts. This year, we made a choice to adopt tax conformity with the One Big Beautiful Bill. Cutting taxes has consequences for our budget. But those trade-offs are hidden by this bill. All we see are the cuts and not the reasons for the cuts. The state is collecting less revenue than expected. This may very well be a short-term problem and hopefully fix itself over time, but it's created a situation that we must fix now, at this time. Here's what I propose. Vote no on Senate Bill 1331 and tell members of this committee to go back to work, to go back and do what they've done year after year after year, to get down into the budget, find the places that need to be cut, and cut it. A straight cut across the board not only cuts bone and muscle, but it also cuts a little bit of fat. So it's treating your lean agencies and your bloated agencies exactly the same. We can streamline the process. There'll be an argument that, well, you can't do all this. It's going to take us too long. We don't have time. We're going to double all of the budgets. You know what? We've been there before. Let's put the budgets together so that we can look at one budget. We can say, yep, there's the cut for 2026. There's what was going to cut for 2027. And there's my total budget. And I can sit down and talk to my constituents and say exactly what happened. Idahoans should be able to look at a single budget bill and see how much we plan to fund education or transportation or water resources. It will take some time, but that's what we're here for. That's what you got voted for. That's what you were elected for, to do the work, do it quick, do it right, line by line, and then go home. We still have time to make that happen. Senators, I ask for your no vote on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there further debate? Senator Zito.
Mr. President, I can't stand here and debate all the numbers and talk about every line in this bill and where the money goes, but I can tell you this. Our budget statewide has grown over 60% in the last 5 years. I can tell you that every penny we spend, whether it's the dedicated budget, the general budget, federal money, I don't care where the money comes from or how you justify it or what you label it or what you name it. People in our legislative districts and in this state have worked hard to put that money in this budget. Now, we didn't have to end up here. There were some things that happened last year that we didn't need to do. We chose a projected income number that was higher than it should have been. The tax cuts are not a bad thing because when you have more money in your pocket, you're going to spend more money, and there's a theory about this that kind of rolls it so that it takes care of itself as you go. But, Mr. President, even last year, we could have made budget decisions that would have structurally reformed the way we spend money and saved our state almost $1 billion so that we wouldn't be looking at this today. And if we need to make these cuts so that we can get this right on track and relieve that tax burden from the people in our state, again, doesn't matter what you label the money, it's all tax money. The government doesn't make income, people do. So I'm going to vote for this, and I hope that we can start to think about the people we represent as much as we think about the bureaucratic agencies that are budgeting this money. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Is there further debate?
Mr. President.
Mayor Woodward.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think the premise of this conversation is that government is bloated and we're spending way more. In fact, we just heard a statistic which I do not agree with. You can cherry pick data off the graphs from the last few years when we've seen an influx of federal money and that which has now subsided. So you can pick points on a graph and say I saw a number like that at 60%. But looking back further in Idaho, in our budgeting history, between 2005 and 2025, we've changed from spending about $2,500 per person here in the state of Idaho of general fund dollars to today's number, or the 2025 number, roughly in the range of $2,700. It's fluctuated up and down. It may go back down a little bit, but that's adjusted per person and for inflation. And that is, again, adjusted with the consumer price index, not the cost of government goods. And so I would say that that is actually a a number that's probably not quite accurate. We're probably spending less. When you look at the cost of what we buy in government, if you asked the transportation department what the cost of a snowplow truck is today versus just 5 years ago, I was just checking, a fire truck, which is a Type 3 wildland firefighting unit, has doubled in price in the last 5 years. So the reality is we have been very Idaho-like in our spending over the last 2 decades. And I think if you look back further, you get the same answer. We are not spending more per person over time. We're not growing government. From my perspective, we have to acknowledge where we are today, what Idaho is today, that we are growing as fast or faster than any other state, and that costs are going up. And so if we would like to maintain our quality of life, that is the question. I would imagine there's someone in St. George, Utah listening to this who would differ with my conclusion, but with 120 years living here in Idaho, I would like to leave this at a place that my kids can enjoy and hopefully grandkids. And so I'd like to maintain that level of effort and do what we've always done here in Idaho, invest in the future, invest in basically what I sometimes refer to as the farm family economics, just doing the right thing. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Is there further debate?
Mr. President.
Senator Guthrie.
Yeah, really briefly, Mr. President. You know, I really appreciate the enthusiasm of the senator from 32, and you can tell that enthusiasm is genuine. He really is committed to looking at those, and there's others in this room that are the same, and I admire that, having served in that capacity a couple of years ago. I understand what a commitment that is, and I certainly appreciate the efforts of those involved in the process. There's been comments about enhancement bills coming, going to fix part of the problem. We are not discussing those today. We're only discussing the rescission bills. There's other ways to solve this riddle, other ways that are less harmful. Senators, we can do better. I'll be voting no.
Is there further debate? Hearing none. Senator Groh, you're recognized to close the debate.
Thank you, Mr. President. I appreciate the debate from all. I won't mention all the different districts, but thank you for your comments. And I'd just like to add a couple of thoughts regarding the statement that the Attorney General didn't know what these cuts were going to do. I have a letter from his office. May I refer to that?
Having cited the source, well, you can always refer. If you're going to quote and read, then that's a permission thing.
Yeah, I'd like to read from the January 30, 2026 letter on the State of Idaho Office Attorney General Ral R. Labrador.
Having cited the source, Senator Groh, you may read the document.
In that letter, it specifically refers to an additional 1% equivalent, an overall 4% decrease of $1,306,600 and what that would mean, and then an additional 2% equivalent to an overall 5% for the following year, $1,629,600, what that would mean. So just want to clarify that the Attorney General, I think the comment was that maybe he wasn't quite sure what those cuts would mean, but he did have that information and replied to us. Regarding lack of information, here I've got 154 pages of responses from the departments and agencies as to how they would deal with these 1% additional cuts. So to say that we haven't had information, we haven't looked at it, is not exactly accurate. This is available to all members of the group that are trying to work the budget. So I just highlight that for you. As we looked at those cuts, the gentleman on the second floor had the 3%, and he had the time. He started back when they first did the budgets way back in September to work on those. In October, he did the holdback, et cetera. And so that's been in place. And he worked with the departments and agencies to determine where they would suggest the cuts. We followed that same approach Instead of a 3%, we've got a 1%. We reached out to every department agency and asked them where they would like to make those cuts for the additional 1%. And that's the reply that you're seeing, those 154 pages I just showed you. So we do have information that they have provided and how they would deal with that cut, but that does not preclude us from doing what we choose to do to alter those recommendations that have come from them. We still have that option. Let me just mention here a couple of things. On the budget, again from gentlemen on the second floor, we're looking at $131 million, which is the number that's included in this rescission bill. It's included in the budget produced by him and his folks. So that gets us down to that $45 million bottom line. Back in 2010, there was a 49 million bottom line, and because of uncertainty, it ended up being 1 million when everything was said and done. Uncertainty is still a question. I think we need to be careful that we don't just assume that all these numbers are exact and accurate. We're trying to err on the side of conservatism to make sure that we're keeping that as consistent as we can be as far as being conservative. As we look at let me just harken back to the process, because I think there's a lot of discussion on process here without actually saying it. When I first began working these budgets back in 2018, 19, whenever that was, I was concerned about the process as well, because I saw the prior year's budget and the current year's recommendations were buried into one bill. And so it became very difficult to break out what were really the requests for the current year. This approach tells exactly what the requests are for the current year, because they are not buried in the prior year's base budget that had been going on. So the current year has the improvement of being able to look at it with a microscope. The current year's requests, we get into that in detail. And our folks have been working on these budgets. They continue to work on these budgets. And we will be setting more budgets every day through March 11th. So this is the beginning of the process. This is not the end of the process. I would hope that you would support the folks that have been working hard all of these since the beginning of the session and get this thing passed so we can move ahead to the next thing, because we got a lot of work to do and a lot of budgets to get out of here. With that, I encourage your support on these budgets. With that, the debate is closed.
Debate is closed. The question before the Senate is, shall Senate Bill 1331 pass the Senate? Secretary will call the roll.
Anthony, Berndt, Bjerke, Blaylock, Bruner, Burtonshaw, Carlson, Cook, Den Hartog, Foreman, Galloway, Grove, Guthrie, Harris, Hart, Kaiser, Cole, Lakey, Lenny, Lent, Nichols, Okonowitz, Robbie, Ricks, Bruckty, Samaroff, Shippey, Taylor, Taves, Van Orden.
Mr. President, 60 seconds.
Senator Van Orden, you have 60 seconds to explain your vote.
Thank you. Good senators, I think we got hit in the middle of the summer with a federal bill that put us in quite a quandary after we had balanced our budget last year. So I think we need to go back and address that. And so the senator votes no.
Senator Van Orden votes no.
Ward Engelking.
Mr. President, 60 seconds.
Yes, Senator, go ahead.
Thank you. Just to reiterate, when adjusted for population and inflation, our budgets have grown less than 2% in 20 years. We do not have a spending problem, we have a revenue issue, and these cuts were not done surgically by the working group. Even more problematic is that they're coming so late in the fiscal year with only 4 months left to do a 1% cut. And so these cuts are causing great pain and harm to Idahoans, so this senator votes no.
Wording King votes no.
Wintrow? Woodward? Zito? Seiderveld? Anthem? Burnt? Lenny? Robbie? Ricks? Ruckty? Shippey? Taylor? Wintrow?
Mr. President, 60 seconds.
You have 60 seconds to explain your vote, Senator Wintrow.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think what's deeply troubling is that I used to be a part of the committee when I was in the chamber across the rotunda and again now. And what I've seen is a deterioration of the tradition of the committee, an elegant, decorous committee that was run by the committee members itself. And I think the problem with process is that the process have become so convoluted that we on the committee can't even read the bills, understand what's going on, how the vote is going. So I think instead of getting the cart before the horse, we should stop now, let the committee take charge of the committee and do its job. The senator votes no.
Senator Wintrow votes no.
Mr. President.
Senator
can you
Bierke.
Please let me know how I voted on that.
How do you have Senator Bierke recorded? We have you as an aye.
Thank you.
The vote count shows 18 in favor with 17 against. Senate Bill 1331 has passed the Senate. Hearing no correction of title, the title is approved, will be transmitted to the House of Representatives.